So in the last couple of videos, I showed you how the login worked and how data was being passed between the client and the server. And I also showed you the fetch method that was being used in the JavaScript to actually send that information from the client to the server and then from the server back to the client. Now, in many shops, the server side of the application is created by one developer, and then the client side of the application is made by another developer. So it's not made by the same developer oftentimes. So how does the person who's developing the client side of the application know how to talk with the program or that the server side developer is creating? Well, that's done. What usually happens is that the developer on the server side will create some documentation that the client programmer can read to know how to talk with the server. And that's often called an API, an application programming interface. And what I've done here is provided you with a bookstore API that you can use to know how to talk with the server. So this is here in the assignment. If you click at the bookstore API and open it up, we can see all the documentation for all the different ways of talking with the server. And here we have the documentation for login, which is you are supposed to make a post request to a login URL, and then as part in your payload, you are supposed to, or in your request to the server, in that post request to the server, you need to pass create an object like this, right, with the name attribute and a password attribute, and then the appropriate attributes that you're getting from the login form, and that's what is then sent to the server. And then you can know what to expect or what will come back from the server if you look at the rest of the documentation, which shows you an example of what will be returned from the server. In this case, for example, you'll have a username attribute and a password attribute, and the values associated with those attributes will be either incorrect or correct. And oftentimes this is the extent of the API, but in addition, I've actually provided you with some sort of hands-on examples of how this API is working. If you just click on this link here at the top of the API, and Glitch is warming up here. It's taking its time. And here's an example of, it's again, I'm documenting the post part of the API. If we just click on this, a request was sent to the server, and then the server replied then with this particular little piece of data. We can actually look at it if we open up our developer tools, and if we click on the post, you can see that again the login was logged, and we can look at the header, and of course we saw all this before in a previous video, but we're showing how it exists in the API. Joe and Sesame were the values that were passed along with these attributes, and then the response was username correct, password correct. And we can actually open up again the source code, and if we go to client.js and look at the login, we can see exactly how that API is demoed with this particular example login function. So that's just, of course, only one of the ways of talking with the server that is shown in this API. In addition, there's this select products way of getting the server to reply with a list of all the books in the database. See, that's returning a list of book objects. Um, in addition, looks like this one, it returns what's in the cart, what you actually have in the shopping cart, which in this case is just a subset of the list of total books. And then you can just examine the rest of them if you want, just by keep going down the rest of the documentation. You're going to actually use all of them to complete this assignment, so you'll have to look them over.